Is this Miracle Pictures?
Welcome to Miracle Pictures, where they make a picture a week, and if it's a good picture, it's a miracle.
Hi, I'm Candice.
You're an actress. Well, you came to the right place, kid.
Hollywood Boulevard. The street where starlets are made. Overnight.
In this scene, your motivation is to
stay alive.
Cut! Bill!
He's dead for real. TG, you just don't understand. People are dying.
Hey, that's showbiz.
Everybody's doing it now.
Let's do it.
More of that.
Anything can happen on Hollywood Boulevard.
Hollywood. There's a reason why I picked this movie this week. It's not because of all the TNA, even though it is abundant. This is a send-up. This is a send-up of all those movies.
Yeah, it is, and it's goofy to the extreme, and it got fairly good reviews.
Yep.
Which I was, but then you had a lot of the actors in it who were like Paul Bartel and Mary Woronov.
Yep.
They were like the king and queen of bad.
Candice Rialson, who we saw in Candy Stripe Nurses, she was in a bunch of these movies. You know.
Yeah.
From the last movie, the Candy Stripe Nurses, the beginning, there was a scene where the guy tries to pick up the Latin girl. No, he tries to pick up what's her face, Robin Matson, and she says no. And then remember the other girl that said, "Hey, I would have gone." Remember that from Candy Stripe? That's the curly-haired, skinny girl.
Yeah, who played Bobby, right?
No, she just had one scene in Candy Stripe Nurses. Right, Tara Strohmeyer.
Yeah, but in this movie,
is her name Bobby? Okay.
She was the one who was shot, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, not to give away spoilers. No
spoilers in advance. Spoilers in advance. This is a silly movie, but it was made on a dare. The producer told Corman, "I can make a movie. I'll make the cheapest movie in New World Pictures. $50,000. I'll shoot it in 10 days." Of course, Roger Corman laughed and said, "Sure, I'll do it."
Yep.
But the two directors were Joe Dante and Allan Arkush. They were working for Corman. They were editing trailers.
Right.
That was their deal. This was their first movie, and Dick Miller's in it, of course.
Yes.
Miller. And who else was in this movie? And a lot of and there are directors in this movie in cameos that the only one that I remember was there's a scene where there's a old pool guy cleaning the pool. That's right. Chuck Griffith, who wrote a lot of Corman movies. Paul Bartel from Death Race 2000, and Mary Woronov from the same. Right. And that was actually I think that was a way more big budget movie, and it had a lot of people that became big stars like Stallone, and I don't know about David Carradine, but Candice Rialson was not in that movie. She's in this one, Hollywood Boulevard from 1976.
Yeah. There was even a cameo by Forrest Ackerman.
I didn't see Ackerman. I didn't see him, but I know he's in there.
They were at the party and they were up by the pool.
Oh, is he there?
It was near the very end, and just after that, you see it's just a passing thing. You just see him standing there holding a drink, talking to some girls.
We get a cameo by Godzilla.
Yes, and then it goes to right after his scene is the one where the producer is getting a drink from Robbie the Robot.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. That Dick Miller is getting a drink from Robbie the Robot, right? It was Dick Miller who's getting a drink. Yeah, I think it's Dick Miller.
You're right. Dick Miller.
He's having a conversation with Robbie the Robot there,
trying to become his agent.
This movie has scenes from Battle Beyond the Sun. Those are those two weird creatures. The one that looks like genitalia.
Yeah. Oh God.
That's
That.
from Battle Beyond the Sun. It was a Russian movie that Coppola added scenes to it. Those are the monsters. The Terror.
Yeah.
The Terror. That's a real meta scene. The big bird cage, which is the battle stuff. Night of the Cobra Woman was that shot of the snake. Unholy Rollers was a roller derby thing. Cage Heat. Crazy Mama, Big Bad Mama, and the cars were from Death Race 2000 at the end.
I recognize them. Yeah.
Yeah, from Death Race 2000. And the Paul Bartel character is supposed to be that's supposed to be Corman.
Yeah.
He said that's some of the he used similar lines in his movies. Like, oh, this movie's gonna have some social relevance and bombs and nudity, and that's just goofing on Roger Corman.
Yeah.
Bartel made it. I think he did. He had. I don't know. Death Race did good, and he did. What was the one? Eating Raoul. I think that
Eating
was like
Raoul,
that was like a
that
big
was
movie
his
for him.
sort of breakout.
Yeah, but he
Role.
still went back and did goofy, B movies again.
He probably just. I mean, you could see they were having a lot of fun making this movie.
Rock and Roll High School.
Yeah.
Both him and Woronov were in Rock and Roll High School, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah. I think she played the principal or something.
And Mary Woronov was great in all these movies. What's that other one that I have? Where she was it was almost like this, but it wasn't a send up. It was called Cover Girl Models. And it's like, I guess you got to make a buck,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember a long time ago hearing, I can't remember his name. He was in Dune, but he was a character actor, and he says, you can make a pretty good living as a character actor. You don't get the fame and stuff, but
get a lot of jobs.
Yeah, you get a lot of jobs. Yeah, because they constantly need, people in the background, and just like a guy playing a doctor or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Evan something. I can't remember his name.
What was his name? First name?
Kevin. He was a chubby guy.
Kevin? I don't know.
Right.
I mean, Dick Miller obviously was a character actor, even though he did have a lead role. Well, his name in this movie is Walter Paisley. That's the name of the character he played in Bucket of Blood. And of course, that scene when they're in the drive-in, that's him in The Terror and him, back in '76. So it's kind of like, okay, again, more stock footage just to pad the film or whatever, But it was funny. I mean, it was funny, but it was definitely it was over the top in all areas. You know what I mean? And I remember seeing this on a late night. It was late when I got cable TV, and it was one of the late night Cinemax movies back in the early '80s or something like that.
Right.
And I was like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy," So
the actor I was thinking of was Kenneth McMillan. Hey, if you saw him, you would know him right away. But
yeah, I'm not good at some of that stuff. My friends are. I'm not good. Sometimes a friend goes, "Oh, that's so and so H.W. Wyman." I'm like, "Who?" And then I look at his picture and I go, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy."
He was in Dune, the one that David Lynch made. He was the fat Duke.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Again, I showed you his picture. You go, "Oh yeah, him." I mean, there's a lot of actors like that. You see them, you go, "Oh, what's that guy? I know him from somewhere." Where?
Harry Dean Stanton, guys like that.
Yeah.
Who did a couple of leads, but he was mostly known as a character actor or whatever. L.Q. Jones, Strother Martin. A lot of the guys that were in like Quinn Martin productions, where they show you like Cannon.
Yeah. A Quinn Martin production.
Cannon this week starring, Jason Evers, Victoria Justice, L.Q. Jones, Clu Gulager, and Lee Merriweather or whatever. They would show. There's a video on YouTube. It's a 30-minute video, and it's every guest star on Cannon, just their faces. And one time I watched it with the sound off to see if I could recognize them. I got about half of them, and then there was about 10% that I knew who they were, but I couldn't come up with the name.
Yeah.
So it's a good game for character actor memory. It's like go to the YouTube, go to the Canon, complete all the guest stars, and just try to memorize them. You know?
There was a series of books called Whatever Happened to.
I remember that.
Yeah, so you'd pick them up, and you'd go paging through, and you'd see somebody you knew, but you didn't know their name. You go, oh, that's their name, and oh yeah, I remember them from that movie. It's yeah, well, that's pre-internet, when you had to go to the library to look stuff up.
Yeah, you gotta go to the library. Yeah, they still have libraries. I guess they do.
Yeah, they do.
I guess they do, but I don't know what they use them for. I guess just for sometimes they're used for homeless people to sleep during the day. But
yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you're right. Because I remember my friend Chris used to go. We and him used to go to the library, and every time we would go there to return whatever movie he rented or video, there was always this some weirdo there. Always, all day.
Yeah.
Until they closed.
Yeah.
Strange, but whatever. It is what it is. And they never kicked him out either. I guess the guy was harmless or whatever. But at any rate,
someplace. That's their attitude.
if you just sit there and read a book, they don't do anything to you.
Yeah.
They might. I mean, at a bookstore, they might, tell you to leave. But the library, it depends on the library and how quiet you are.
Yeah, usually if you go and just sit and sleep, they don't bother you. They're not watching your babies.
But anyway, back to our movie. This is a movie about how to break into Hollywood. Especially like in a low budget movie. And you know what? It's probably pretty realistic. In order to get into a movie, what was it? You need an agent, but you can't get an agent unless you've been in a movie.
You can't be in a movie until you join the union. You can't join a union until you're in a movie. It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah. So it's like,
Which is probably correct. For Hollywood, you can't do this until you do this, and then,
But the movie starts off with like they're shooting a skydiving scene.
Right.
And you see
Night Nurses.
Yeah, no, it's from I got it right here. The skydiving. Maybe it is from Night Nurses. I don't know. I got like let's see.
Night Call Nurses.
Is it from Night Call Nurses? Yeah, you're right. Okay. And they're all like, you see like the whatchamacallit, some of the cast of the movie they're making. You see Paul Bartel, Mary Woronov, Tara Stroheim, and of course the young sleazy producer who comes out of a van with topless Kara Strohmeyer, and they're watching the skydiving scene. And as the scene progresses, you see the skydiver's ripcord didn't work or whatever, Right. So
and you kind of hear oh no, my parachute would. You hear it like off camera.
Yeah, like a voiceover.
And he's like, pull the cord. Wait, are you filming? Because all the Bartel wants to do is make sure he gets the shot. And he's always, screaming, more action, more, very pompous.
He's doing Roger Corman imitation.
Yeah. So she's skydiving. You hear her complaining, and then suddenly, boom! You hear
you see the camera shakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then the scene changes, and you see this big hole in the ground shaped like
a Warner
person.
Brother cartoon.
Yeah, like the coyote. And they're like, oh crap, they're gonna need another actress.
Yeah. The producer's like, okay, we're gonna need somebody else. The producer doesn't give a damn. And then of course it goes to the intro with Miracle Pictures. If it's what was it? Miracle Pictures. If it's a good picture, it's a miracle.
Right. And then
gosh.
Candy
right there, this movie's right there, the movie's a comedy, but it does have dramatic scenes in it.
So then you see Candy. She's I don't know if she got off a bus station or a train station or something.
She had a car, so I don't know.
Oh, yeah, so you see her walking down the streets looking for an agent.
Looking at all the the Walk of Fame or whatever.
Her hands are feet in Betty Davis's thing at Grauman Chinese Theater, looking at all the weirdo people.
Oh yeah.
So then, she's going in that agent. She goes in one, and you don't see her. You just see her going in and coming out. And she goes into one, and she's exasperated and tired. She goes into another one, and she comes out with her shirt torn open, and she's covering herself up and whatever. And then she
ends up in Dick Miller's office.
at Dick Miller's office.
Walter Paisley.
Yeah, Walter Paisley, and that's when he gives that speech about you can't work in the movies until you get an agent. Can't get an agent until you work in the movies. You have to join a union to work in the movies, but you can't work in the movies. It's all that.
And he's up there. Okay. Do you are you a flamethrower? No. Are you a masseuse? No. Oh, you're an actress. Great.
And when he's in this, because there's a couple of scenes when you see him in the office, he's always eating something. Because when she first walks in, he goes, "Oh, you're the sandwich girl." No. So then he says, "Well, how do I get an agent?" He goes, "I don't know." "Oh no, how do I get into the movies?" He goes, "I don't know. You get into a movie and then you come talk to me." So it's like, even though he's an agent, she has to do all the work. So then she goes out and she's looking for casting calls in the newspaper, and some guy comes along, all kind of suave and whatever. And he goes, "Hey, you're like the right part. We're looking to shoot a movie. It's a sort of a very realistic."
Yeah, they were both at a newsstand looking at what is it, Billboard magazine or something?
Newspaper, yeah.
Oh, Hollywood Reporter or one of those deals.
Something like that. So then he
says, "Do you have a car?"
Yeah, he convinces her to be in a movie, and she's like, "Oh yes, we'll need a car." "Oh, I got a car." It's a very nice red car. I don't know what kind it is.
It looks like one of those like '57 Chevys or something.
So then he says, "Well, we're going to do a bank robbery scene, so we need you to, to be the getaway person." So then, he puts on a ski mask. He drives her somewhere, or she drives him somewhere, and he puts on a ski mask and pulls out a gun. And she goes, "Oh, she startled me. It's very realistic." She says, "Here, you put on the other." He was wearing a nylon stocking, hide his face. So he goes, "Here, you put on another ski mask." He says, but how are they going to see my face?" He says, "We're going for realism." So they pick up another guy, and they go, it says, "All right, pull up there. That's where the bank is." So they go in, they rob the bank, and they come out. Meantime, she's pulled the stocking off so you could see her face, and she's looking around. It's like, "Where are the cameras?" He says, "This is realism. The cameras are hidden and stuff." So they're driving away, and the cops are chasing them. So she avoids the cops, and he goes, "Right, pull over. You're driving crazy. We gotta sort of split up." So the other guy who was with him, he goes, "Right, I'll meet you at the." No, the original guy, bank robber, says, "All right, you leave. I'll split up the money, and we'll meet at the rendezvous point." So the other bank robber gets out, but he took the money. So then
the other robber takes off.
Yeah, the other robber takes off in his car, and he runs into
it's like a barricade. Police
barricade where they shoot him, and then this car rolls over, and I assume he's dead or whatever. And that scene is from
Big Bad Mama or something. Crazy Mama. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So then he dies in the car accident, and then Candy and the other guy are driving, and he's like, "Okay, pull over, because she goes through the."
She goes through the barricade again.
Right, the same barricade that the other guy died in. So she drives right through it, crunches up her car, and then he's like, pull over, and then he gets out for some reason, and she runs away, right? She
Yeah.
she runs away, and what the hell happens next?
Then she goes back to Paisley, and he tells her, and she tells him what happened. He goes like,
Yes,
gets a call, and something about they need a stunt driver.
yeah, and so that's
They
because
gets a call from Paul Bartel saying they need
yeah.
a stunt driver.
So, but when she goes back to the agent, and he's like, "I tell you, you got to be careful of the people out there."
Yeah, next time don't take a job unless you got an agent or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Getting back to the show.
So then she does she's Paul. She arrives, and Paul Bartel says, "Oh, you're the new stunt girl," and Mary Woronov is all like snotty and catty to her and stuff. So then she does the stunt, and
They're all happy with her.
yeah, they're all happy with her and stuff. And the guy who's the writer
Takes a liking to her.
and they sort of fall in love after if at first the guy's making fun of seeing somebody for the first time and falling in love, and then he looks up from his typewriter and she's there, and they of course fall in love on first sight. So then they're having a picnic, and they're getting all hissy and lovey-dovey and stuff, and then a song comes up.
That's got Captain Cody and the Lost Planet Airman. It's a pretty dirty song too.
Yeah, and all words rhyming with truck.
And the other word.
Yeah, and it's like, what? So then it cuts to a scene. It's a roller derby, and you hear like an overdubbing voice of like, "Oh, I gotta get out of this."
That's from Unholy Rollers.
Yeah, I gotta get out of this business. I just keep going around in circles, and she's complaining to her friend, and her friend goes, "Well, why don't you be an actress? You're a natural. You pretend to, all the time when you're doing the roller derby." And she's like, "I don't know, maybe." So then some kid runs up.
Oh yeah, that's when the other actress comes in. Yeah, right. The brunette.
So while they're talking,
he asks for an autograph.
Asks for an autograph. She gives it, and he goes, "This is what I think of your team." Rips it up, kicks her in the knee, and then runs away. And she goes, "Oh, I got to meet a better class of people." So they, all the actresses, Mary Woronov, the one who plays Candy. What the hell's her name again?
Candice Rialson.
Candice Rialson.
And before that scene, there was an obligatory wet T-shirt scene too.
Yeah. So they go. They're on the set.
And the producer's got some guy. Okay, line them up, and all these girls are all posing, and he goes, "All right,
Yeah, we gotta see who's. I forget what the reason.
Yeah, basically he needed some extras or whatever. He wanted some hot chicks, and then of course they get into the van with them after they're done, with a wet T-shirt or whatever.
Yeah, the producer, PG.
Right. That's PG. Yeah.
I think when it first starts out, you see him come out of a van with a girl, and I think
with
that's
Tara Stroheimer. With Tara. Yeah, in the beginning. Yeah.
So he's they're doing the scene, and then they're all in Dick Miller's office. So it's Mary Woronov, Candice, and the two other ones.
Tara Stroheimer and God, what was the lady that played the roller derby? Oh, what was her name? I'll find it out. Anyway,
Rita George.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Rita George.
They get offered a women in prison movie in the Philippines.
She was dating
Dean Martin.
Yeah. So they go. It goes. Oh, we got a woman in prison movies, and so the three girls are all excited. And then Mary Woronov, she's like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm a much better actress. I shouldn't have to do these crappy movies." So then Dick Miller goes, "All right, well, we'll have one of the other girls star in the movie." And then suddenly she gets all jealous. She goes, "Well, I'll go." And
hold on, Harry. Girls, called you all here to offer you a glorious opportunity.
Look out.
It is not only a paid vacation in a tropical paradise. It is not only leading roles in a major motion picture.
It's a way for Walter to make an extra buck.
It is Machete Maidens of Moritano. Miracle Pictures' new super spectacle shot entirely in the Philippines. It's a great script. You know how much that weighs. Huh?
I did this picture already 3 times. Sorry, Walter.
Oh, there's a dedicated girl.
Walter, if it's a part, I will go anywhere for a part.
Shit, I'll go. I've never been out of the country except Tijuana.
If you go, I'll go. Let's do it.
Great. Well, that's 3 of you. Candy, you can play Mary's part. That's the lead.
Okay, Walter. Where's the ticket?
So then the first scene that they're shooting is a massacre. And you see all the girls like running over hills and running through woods with machine guns and like throwing grenades and, shooting rifles. And they look like they're having a hell of a time doing that, especially with the machine guns. You see them run downhill and then they go, da, 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 da. And then it cuts to scenes from other movies where you see
all the Filipino movies, Big Birdhouse, Big
all the guys
Dollhouse.
dying and, getting blown up and stuff. So then it's, after Paul Bartel's great action. So then you see one of the guys, he's, it's lunch and he's like one of the casualties. So he's got his arm in a sling and he's sort of pouring ketchup on his sandwich and he looks down at his arm. And the sling is supposed to be all bloody and he adds more ketchup to the fake wound.
Yeah, right.
I've seen somewhere else somebody else do that. So then Mary Woronov, she has to meet. There's a scene where it's like they wanted to do some kind of action with the dog, and so she's trying to be all friendly.
We talked about how Mary Woronov was pissed that Candice Rialson was going to get the lead role, so that's how come she decided to go into the movie. So she's already pissed off at it.
Yeah, so she's trying to be nice to these guard dogs, and they're like, she's like, oh, woo. And it's just there's a lot of like quick, goofy scenes, just
like little vignettes
for laughs or jokes or whatever. So then they're going to film the scene where Candice gets attacked by these 4 guys, and then Paul Bartel is like, all right, action, and then they start ripping at her clothes and trying to pull her shoes off and stuff. And
Bartel's like, hey, let's more action.
More action.
And she's like, you can tell by her face, she's like screaming, like, she's like really freaked out or whatever. Yeah.
So then Bartel goes, cut, and they don't stop. God, and then the screenwriter Patrick, who she has fallen in love with, he comes in and he rescues her and then comforts her and stuff. So then there's a scene where the producer is with he's in bed with what's her name?
With a couple
again?
of the girls.
It's first with
he
the one.
He was with Tara Stroheimer the first
Tara.
time.
And then you see the other one, Rita George. She's on the ground sleeping, and then suddenly you hear this snake coming, and you see a picture of a cobra. So she screams and jumps up, and so Tara and the producer, they jump out and they see her, so they like bring her back into their little crappy room.
Rita George plays a character called Bobby Quackenbush. That's a name.
So
anyway.
And then there's the obligatory orgy scene, and they're all, kissing and whatever. And then it's Candice, Rita, and Tara. They're all
like a sunbathing scene, right?
And they're all talking casually while their boobs are hanging out, and then there's one weirdo of the film crew, Scotty. He's always messing things up and getting in the way, so he's spying on them. And then Rita takes a soda can or a beer can or whatever and nails him in the head with it. And then there's another fight scene where they come out and they're shooting guns and whatever, and the town's and it's taking place at night, I think.
Yeah. That's the attack scene where
Yeah,
from
and then
another Filipino movie from.
yeah, and and things are blowing up, and that you see them like come running and then kneel down and like shooting the Tommy guns and stuff, and then during all this fighting and explosions and guys like leaping, when they have an explosion, you have a couple of guys leaping, off those springboards like they're being blown away by the explosion. So
It's
during
either
the
from
one,
the hot box or the big bird cage. One of those.
yeah, one of those two. Um, so during that scene, the one who Tara,
Sarah Strohmeyer, yeah.
yeah, she gets
Jill
shot.
McBain. Jill McBain was her character, I believe.
She gets shot,
She gets shot. And Paul
and
Bartel goes, "Oh my God, that was perfect. That was great. That was more than."
that was so realistic. And then they're looking at her like, oh, um, she's really shot. And then her friend Rita George is like, well, we got to call the police. And they're like, well, this is the Philippines. There are no police. This is it. So they're all like, the whole film crew is like, well, it's probably like time to wrap up the set and move
Yeah, they
on.
just walk away,
And
and
they
then
just walk away and leave her there.
the kind of like they do a pull shot, and it fades to black or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they're back in Hollywood. Isn't another music interlude there?
No, I only remember one. I only remember Captain Cody doing one.
All right. Well, something happened, but they're back in Hollywood.
But they're back in Hollywood, and Walter is going to take her and the writer to the premiere of the movie Machete Maidens,
The Machete Maidens of Maui.
which is a reference to oh gosh, what movie was it? It's a reference to an old movie. And then years later, like a few years ago, they did a documentary about the Filipino women prison movie. They call it Machete Maidens. So it's definitely like a word that they like using or whatever. Like
Yeah. So
I
they,
think it was. I think that time it was Machete Maidens of Moritao or something.
yeah,
I
something
don't
like
know.
that. So then, yeah. So then he's driving. He pulls up in a car,
It's like a
and
it's like a little bug like a little
yeah, tiny
MG.
little car, and he's like, come on, climb in. And they're like, what kind of car is this? And he goes, it's a Rose Canardly. Like a
Yeah,
Rose
yeah, right.
Canardly. Says, yeah, it rolls downhill and can hardly get up others.
Yeah, right.
So he's driving around. He gets lost, but he finally makes it to the drive-in. He's telling him it's a big premiere, and she's all happy. And then she's like, "This is the premiere." It's so rundown drive-in.
And they all get there and they start chugging popcorn and whiskey.
Yeah, yeah, and they showed various movies. That's where you see the weird sex scene between the dopey aliens.
Yeah, that movie originally when it played, it's called Battle Beyond the Sun. They somebody wisely at the studio darkened that scene so you didn't see exactly what the monsters look like, but
Right.
that version of it is very clear what's going on.
Yeah,
It's pretty
and it's clear what they
grim.
look like, and it's like, oof.
Yeah.
So
Coppola was responsible for that. I think he was having fun.
So then, they're watching the movie and stuff. So finally, it was three pictures. So the first one was uh,
It was a terror,
sci-fi
right, with
movie.
Boris
Yeah,
Karloff.
was it?
And
Yeah, it
and
was.
and then Dick Miller, Walter Paisley goes, yeah, that was me
Yeah,
back when I was younger.
I used to be an actor. Oh, Walter, you could have been a great actor. And they're like you said, they're passing around a bottle of Jim Beam and getting drunk. So it finally comes up to Machete Maidens, and they're watching a movie, and Candice is getting all depressed and stuff. And then they
And
show
drunk.
yes, and then they show the attack scene. She's like, "Oh, they told me they weren't going to use that in the movie." So she gets up and leaves, and
And goes to the projectionist booth.
right, goes to the projectionist, and the boyfriend was going to follow, but Dick Miller's like, "Oh, just
Let her
just let her
go.
go." Because the first time they see themselves on screen, they always get upset. So then she goes, and then the projectionist is watching that attack scene,
And then
and then she,
you get another scene around there where there's another car and there's a
oh
kid and
yeah,
the parents and the kid really digging the movie and the parents are like, we need to get out of here. This
this
is a
is
terrible
disgusting. This
movie.
is gross. And the kid's like, can't we stay till he starts doing
Yeah.
hand signals for sex and whatever.
Yeah.
So So she goes up. She tries to get the projectionist to stop rolling the movie, and as he's looking, and he suddenly realizes, she's the one in the movie.
And it was
So
during the rape scene, I think,
yes.
right?
So he attacks her, and then the guy who was all like moralistic, he comes into projectionist.
Well, he comes in because remember when they were fighting, they hit the camera and the film like dissolved or
It burned.
whatever.
Yeah, it burned. So then he sees.
He goes to the projection
projectionist
booth and sees what's going on.
Right, and so he starts helping to attack her, and then Dick Miller and the boyfriend go looking for her, and Dick Miller finds her, and he starts fighting. He knocks out the second guy who was all moralistic, and then he's fighting with the projectionist, and it's
The projectionist does some kung fu moves or whatever. I don't know.
So then while he's hustling with Dick Miller, the Candice gets up and she hits him in the head with a roll of film, which knocks him out. And it's just stupid.
And then I think after that, then after that is that pool scene, right?
Well, yeah. So then it's the next day. She's in bed with the
writer. Yeah, that's right.
My friend. Yes, and he's like, "Do you want?" She's got a hangover. She says, "Do you want something to drink?" She goes, anyway. So he gets up and he gets dressed in like a '50s garb.
Yeah.
His hair greased back and he's got a leather jacket on, and he's looking around and he goes over to his pool house, which is locked, and he unlocks it and then sneaks in. And she's like, she's like, oh well, he goes, that's his pool house stuff. So then what's that? I can't read.
Well, then I think there's a scene after that with the pool and PG, the producer's talking about he wants to make a 1950s movie.
Right, yeah, the writer goes, he wants to make a 1950s movie.
And the writer's ready to do it. He's like, you said, he's all dressed up and
then PG goes, I read your script and we're gonna do it and we're gonna change it, but we're gonna do it. And the writer's like, wait a minute, you told me we were doing a 50s movie. I'm all prepared. And the producer PG goes, don't worry, it will be a 50s movie, but 2050.
Yeah.
And they have he's going to use the pool guy who was once a famous actor, but
Charles Griffith.
And he's trying to get stuff out of the pool, and he's what's her name? Rita George is there. So then you see they're on the new movie set, and then you see a cowboy and aliens. One has like a fly head.
Fly man. They're doing like all goofy scenes about movies, or Godzilla shows up.
Yeah, Godzilla's up there. You see one scene where Godzilla's sitting on a toilet and he's reading the script. He gets up, throws the script in the toilet. It's just a ceramic.
Bunch of gags, sight gags, or whatever.
Yeah, just sight gags. Yeah. So there's going to be a scene where Candice and Rita George are going to be driving a futuristic car. That's the one from Death Race 2000.
And there was, and I think before that, there's like an explosion on the set or something like that.
Oh yeah, Mary Woronov. She's doing a scene where she's driving, and some motorcycle guys are trying to attack her, and she's like pushing.
And that's from Death Race 2000.
And so after she's done with the stunt, she gets out and she starts complaining about, she's a better actress. She shouldn't be in these kind of movies. And the car explodes.
That's right.
Ooh, what's going on? Ooh. So then it's Candice and Rita George's scene, and they're in I forget what the name of the car is, but it's got the fins that go across the back.
I know. I think that was a car. David Carradine played Frankenstein in that movie, so I don't remember what it's called.
Okay, that's right. Because she was Candice was wearing the Frankenstein.
She was wearing his Frankenstein suit.
The Frankenstein Death Race 2000 costume, not the flat-headed monster cow.
Yeah. Right. The kid in Death Way to 2000. Character was called Frankenstein because he had so many car accidents that apparently he was disfigured, but he really wasn't. But he wore the mask just for the illusion of
Just
it.
the illusion. So then they're driving, and her brakes. Somebody played around.
Some
with
mysterious
her
figure comes out the night before or whatever and cuts the brakes.
Yes. Yeah. It does something. Plays around with it. You see them open up the car and then doing something. It was a very dark scene. So then they're speeding along in the car, and she's like, "There's no brakes," and so there's another goofy scene where Paul Bartel and the cameraman are driving around all crazy, trying to follow them and catch the shot, and at the same time help them. And so it's just again more goofiness, driving around, stupid.
Yeah, padding. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Um,
So then the car finally stopped. I guess it runs out of gas
They
or
were like
something.
near a cliff or something, and we were able to.
Yeah.
The car finally stopped. So she gets out. Or somebody gets out. Oh no, it was Bobby. She starts yelling. Not Bobby. Rita George. She starts yelling.
Bobby Quackenbush.
Right. She starts yelling at PG. I'm gonna quit. I can't do this. And then PG is all like, "Oh, you have to. I put my house up. I put my car up. To pay for this movie. And if I don't finish this movie, they're gonna put me in jail because I can't pay my creditors." And she's like, "All right, I'll do this one last thing, but then I'm out." So then you see it at night.
She gets called at night for a retake on a scene.
She's like, a retake. So then she goes back down to the set. It's like a western town. So she goes back down to the set, and she's looking around, like calling like people like PG, Candy. I think of Paul Bartel's name. What was his name?
Oh boy, I don't remember. I can look it up right now. But at any rate, yeah, she's like looking around. It's like
Eric Von Leppy.
Everybody, you know what? Eric Von Leppy was the name of Boris Karloff in The Terror.
Yeah. So she's looking for them, and suddenly you see this dark figure dressed all in black.
And you know what? I was watching before we did the show, I was watching an interview with Dante about this movie. That whole sequence with the figure clad in black and the fog, that was his kind of a tribute to a Mario Bava movie.
Oh.
He said that.
That would make sense.
Yeah. I could see it now. Yeah, I can see it.
So then the figure takes out a knife and slashes Bobby, and Bobby's running around the movie.
Yeah, he chases. The person chases her for a while, but he finally catches up to her.
Yeah, chases her, and somehow the camera gets turned on.
Yeah, it's the killer. The killer bumps into the camera, and then you see the red light turn on or whatever.
Yeah, turn it on. So then, the killer finally catches Bobby and kills her with the knife. And then
I guess the next day they find out about it, and Candice, I guess she breaks up with the writer or whatever, and then she goes into the trailer and sees photos of the girl, Bobby Quackenbush or whatever.
So she's so she's distraught. There's the newspaper says there's a slasher on the loose, and so she gets upset. She's gonna quit, and
she takes off in her car.
Takes off, and then
the writer starts chasing after her in his car.
Yeah, so you're thinking now it's the writer who's the killer.
Yeah, right.
So then he's looking for Mary. The agent's looking Candice. The agent's looking for Candice, and he's calling around, and
he calls up Mary Woronov.
Yeah, saying, is she there? Because she's quitting, she's leaving, and somehow it gives Mary Woronov the impression that she knows who the killer is. And so Mary Woronov's like, oh, where did she go?
And then I think Dick Miller said she's probably at the Hollywood sign or whatever, because there was an earlier shot in the movie that she was sitting at the Hollywood sign in the mountains there looking. So maybe that was a place that she would go.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
there was a scene. It seemed like an insignificant scene, but it paid off at the end, where she would sit at the Hollywood sign and just look at the hills or whatever.
Yeah. So meanwhile, all the film people, they're watching the rushes of the previous movies, and then as they're watching it, suddenly the scene changes, and it's the scene of the movie set at night, and then you see the killing of.
And Mary
Even
Woronov takes her mask off, and she.
Oh, it's Mary who's the killer.
And the
So
writer
then-
had gone. The writer had gone back to the screening room.
Right.
Because he
couldn't
stopped
find
chasing her, went back to the screening room.
So then Mary, you see Mary, I see Candice there, and she's sitting where she was in the beginning of the movie, looking at Hollywood, but she's all disillusioned now, and it's like, And then you see Mary Woronov, she's like got an axe, and she's hacking at the wires that holds up the letter that.
The letter Y, in Hollywood, because Candy's like sitting right underneath the letter Y in Hollywood.
So then Pat drives up, and he's got a gun, and he's like, Candice, and she turns around, she sees Mary, and Mary's like going, oh crap, and she's looking back to him and then to Mary, and she's got the axe, and so then she runs over, she starts trying to hack at Candice, and Pat's running down with the gun, but he can't shoot because he doesn't want to hit Candice. So finally, they sort of separate, and as they separate, Mary steps under the Y, and then that's when the wires that she was hitting.
Yeah, because they were showing scenes. They were showing she cut the rope that held the Y up until it was like a little thread or whatever. It was still hanging in there.
Right.
Remember with the axe, she was cut. She had to stop because they showed up. The guy showed up. The writer showed up. Yeah.
So then
she cuts him too. I think with a little bit with it. He gets an axe.
That's it. She cuts him in the leg with the axe.
Yeah.
And he feels, he's like, Rrr! And
Mary Woronov grabs the gun too.
Yes, at the very end, she grabs the gun
and she's ready to shoot him.
And she's going to kill them both. And that's when the wire that she had been chopping at snaps, and the wife falls down and kills her. And then it switches to, I guess it's months or a year later, or whatever, where it's a big movie premiere, and Candice is there, and like, like an evening. She's really dressed up to the nines, and she's got a black fur on and stuff. And the writer was there too. He's wearing a tux, and it's a movie based on her life. And she's made it. Like after all that trial and travail, she's finally become a famous actress. And then it ends with the robot. I forget what the robot scene was.
Well, Dick Miller talking to the robot, and he's like, he was like, Dick Miller's talking to the robot, and the robot's like, Dick Miller's like, hey, could you say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn or something? And the robot's like, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Well, he's like, yeah, I need a little bit of work. Let's just work it out or whatever,
It was a goofy.
That was just another excuse to get. They probably had access to the robot, and they said, "Hey, let's just write a scene at the end with the robot just to get in another joke or whatever." It was a jokey movie, man.
It was a jokey movie, a lot of inside stuff.
Made for $50,000 on a dare.
Yeah,
and it ended up making money. Yeah,
I think it made $1 million in rentals.
And it cost $50,000 to make this movie.
That's a pretty
good profit for Roger Corman.
Yeah, but that's what he was known for. He's known for making really low budget movies that somehow for the most part made money. He knew what people wanted, and he knew what he was making too. It didn't try to be greater than it was or less than it was.
He always tried to put in something, some pseudo relevant topic in it, but the reality is he knew it was all about action and sex and violence, and he knew what his audience wanted. Now when I was watching the interview with Dante, he said they didn't really like that Hollywood Boulevard name, but another name that was being thrown was Hollywood Hookers, and he goes, well, that's not good
Oh,
either.
God,
So
no.
they just went with Hollywood Boulevard because it really doesn't describe the movie, but it is what it is, you know. I
You
saw
know,
it on cable, like I said before,
Hollywood
first time.
Boulevard. I mean, Hollywood and Vine. That was popular. Uh, that
Yeah,
was
I don't
supposed
know.
to
I don't know
be
what.
like the center of where Hollywood is. Hollywood and Vine were, and this, some of this goes back to an earlier time of uh, what was considered, what was like popular for the culture back then. So Hollywood and Vine was like a popular corner where people went to be discovered,
I guess
and
you know, it just, but it doesn't really describe the movie. Like, you
no,
know, whatever. The Big Bird Cage is kind of a weird one. You know, Women in
yeah,
Prison might be good. You know, Caged Heat
right,
sounds pretty good. You know, Crazy Mama, but this one kind of like, but it still did okay. I mean,
yeah,
for
yeah,
what
and
it
it's
is.
the poster's great. The poster, the pic, kind of tells somewhat of the
Yeah,
story.
they got a blonde that looks like Candice Rialson, and
Right, it's got a
it's got the
star on.
sign.
Yeah,
Yeah, those guys knew how to sell it with a poster.
yeah. Well, I think for a couple of movies, the poster came first, and then the
Sure.
story.
And then, you know, since it's Roger Corman, you know, the distributors or the theaters, oh, well, it's a Roger Corman movie, rated R. Yeah, we know what it's going to be like.
Yeah,
It's gonna be like, you know, it's gonna deliver the goods, you know, whatever
yeah,
the storyline is. It's gonna be, so, you know, they just probably put it on a double bill with some other movie that had come out a year before or whatever. No, but it did have actors that could act in it. I mean, unlike some movies of this kind where they get like nobodies that can't act, they did have, there is talent behind these movies.
yeah,
They're effective actors. Candice Rialson was always good.
yeah,
You know, Dick Miller's always good.
yeah.
You know, yeah, it's mid '70s at maybe its peak as far as, I don't know if, I don't know, I'm not sure how far the movies went after '76. I mean, I'm sure remember, because the next year, you know what happened in '77? Star
What?
Wars took over.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, it was
So yeah,
77. Wow.
I mean, I'm sure they were still making these movies, but
Right.
Star Wars took over in '77. So this is almost, I'm not gonna say this is an end of an era, because they sure did when we were in a prison movie, but they were doing them in the '80s, and they were more over the top, like Reform School
Right.
Girls or whatever.
Right.
But of the Corman era, after the next year, it was all like, okay, let's cash in on Star Wars. Let's get Star
Yeah.
Crash,
All
Battle
your
Beyond the
StarCraft,
Sun.
Battle. Yeah. All that stuff.
Yeah, the whatever, not Battle Beyond the Sun. I forgot what it's called, Battle on the Stars or whatever. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
starting. Yeah, I was talking to my friend the other day. We're saying, yeah, you know, Star Wars just changed everything. You know, you
Yeah.
can tell by when you bought a famous monster. Before Star Wars, it was like Godzilla or his Sin Dun Demon. All of a sudden, it was like Star Wars, Star Wars, StarArs, and then Superman, Superman, Superman. So
Yeah.
sci-fi and super stuff started becoming
Yeah.
more
Exactly.
popular or whatever, and took over the imagination. It was almost like, it almost was, you know what, it's weird, it's almost like a cultural change, because it happened, think about it this way, it happened in music. You know what happened in '76 and '77, right? Punk.
Yeah.
That's what happened. It changed things. You know,
Yeah.
before it was hard rock or prog or whatever, then all of a sudden it's like punk came in, and then after punk, disco came in,
Yeah.
so it kind of
Yeah.
changed. It's almost like a generational
Yeah.
change.
For a while. Yeah. For like in the late '60s, early '70s, it was the hippies had sway, and
Mhm.
you had a lot of that. You know, some of those
Yeah,
psychedelic
biker movies,
movies
hippie
and stuff.
movies.
Yeah. Then punk came along, and it was entirely different
Yeah, and then in the early '70s,
attitude.
had we talked about it before. You had Exorcist movies, you had Dirty Harry cop movies, you had,
Right.
you know, Good Old Boy, Moonshine, and
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds movies.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this is almost kind of like, I'm sure they made some other, but I don't think they made any more nurses movies after this. I don't know. I don't know if
No,
they
because
made. I think they
after
made.
that
I think
also.
they did do like that Cover Girl Models, which was a similar type of movie, except it was more quote unquote serious. It wasn't a spoof. They did a few things like that, but
Yeah, and then that it got towards the end, or the middle end was more like frat boy stuff.
yeah. Then Porky's. That's another one that changed the thing. And then the teen comedies started showing up, like the Breakfast Club,
Yeah,
and all
Animal
that stuff.
Animal House came out. That changed.
Animal House was 78. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, Animal House. Yeah.
But that also Kentucky Fried Movie came out.
That was a spoof. Yeah, you still
Yeah.
got cheerleader movies. You still got like I remember there was one called Hots that was kind of like a cheerleader movie. You
Yeah.
still
Oh
had that.
God, yeah.
You saw Hots? You remember that?
Yeah.
That's another cable classic. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
Hots, and then there was teen comedies. I guess Corman was in on them, but other studios started cranking them out too. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is a like I said, I saw this back in the 80s, and memorable movie. Funny movie.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, it
sure.
was fun. For when you look at it for what it's worth, it's like you see it and you kind of expect one thing. You don't expect it to be as funny as it
No,
is.
no.
But yeah, so it's a little step above, and I think that's because they um, had better actors in it, like you said.
They had better actors. They had two directors instead of one. So Joe Dante went on to do Piranha, Gremlins, and Allan Arkush. I think he did Rock and Roll High School, and he did some other. I think he went on to more serious movies too. So he had good talent, and the actors were all delivered. They were fine in their roles or whatever. You'll get some movie made by another director with people that are just boring and wooden. And the movie was well paced because the two directors were editing trailers, so they knew how to cut movie, and they knew how to take a movie and make a trailer out. So obviously they knew all the and they also knew all the scenes in the
Yeah.
movies. So from what I remember, they had an interview with both of them on YouTube, and I think they said, yeah, well, we cut a lot of these movies, so we knew, we kind of knew exactly what we could do, because
Right.
we had
Hmm.
experience. So they were able to, you know, I mean, the scenes where the girls are shooting and they cut to the everything blowing up, all the explosions and all that. If you didn't know, you could
Yeah, if
buy
you
it.
did, yeah. I think with like most of the movie, if you didn't know what movie or that it was a cut-in piece, uh, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily know it wasn't part of it wasn't like reused film.
No, I mean there was one shot where you could tell the film grain was different, but for
Different,
the
right?
most part, it looked the same to me.
Right.
The Death Race 2000 stuff that fit in. I knew it was Death Race 2000, but if you didn't know it, you would go like, "Oh, and the film looked the same." Mary Woronov looked the same.
Right.
They still had the cars from the movie, so they could get Candice Rialson to get in the car. They still had the Frankenstein suit,
The
so she
costume,
could
yeah,
So yeah, they were pretty clever what they did, and
yeah,
obviously what they
yeah.
did was fluff, but they were pretty clever at it, and they went on to have careers probably because of this movie. Because, like I said, Dante and Arkush, this was their first feature.
Mm.
So there you go.
Yeah,
It's worth checking out.
yeah.
We saw it on Tubi. I
Tubi, I
looked
saw it on
online
Plex. I saw it on Plex.
on Plex. Okay, I saw it on Tubi.
Yeah,
Um,
it's around.
it's around. I don't think the Blu-ray is available anymore. I think there's a DVD for sale on YouTube, but I watched another video with a guy who said he was talking about the Blu-ray and it had a lot of features, but it was put out by I think it was Scorpion, and a
Mm.
lot of these smaller companies that put out DVDs now they're very limited.
Yeah,
So they put out like a few hundred and then that's it.
yeah, they're
Can't
gone.
find them anymore. So, I mean, it's out there. It's worth checking out. It's if you like this kind of stuff, it's a spoof of this genre. If you don't care about this genre or exploitation in the 70s, you're just gonna think it's a stupid movie that's like, got old-fashioned laughs. But if you're like, in on the joke or whatever, it's a good one.
Yeah, and if I mean, most people who tend to watch these movies tend to understand a little bit about filmmaking because they're really fans and they'll read up on this stuff and they'll read about the directors and the
Sure.
producers and stuff. So I
And
mean, you can get a lot of the inside jokes.
And now with Wikipedia, with internet, with YouTube, you can, after you watch the movie, you can look it up and
Yeah.
get information that you couldn't get before unless you had a book.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's good. It's out there. It's fun. It's only like, what was this? It was about 90 minutes,
90
right?
minutes,
90.
yeah, something like that. Wasn't long.
Yeah, it could have been cut a little bit. I mean, there was a couple of scenes in there that, like when the cameraman is interviewing Paul Bartel and he's interviewing, it was like you could tell that's like padding, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. I guess at that time they wanted the movie to be 80 something or 90 minutes. It couldn't be 70 minutes because I don't know. I don't know what the rationale. Now every movie's got to be 3 hours long or
Oh God, I hate that.
whatever.
I think most people or older professionals say, at most a movie should be 90 minutes.
Yeah, it seemed like it seemed like the as the decades progressed, the movies got 5 or 10 minutes longer. In the 50s they
Yeah.
were like 70. In the
Yeah.
60s they made it like kind of towards the 80 minute. In the 70s 90, and then it became blah blah blah. And now it's over 2 hours it's over 2 hours for anything.
Yeah, it's not worth it because there's too much
Yeah,
going
it used
on,
to
too
be
much
that theaters.
padding.
It used to be that the theaters wanted the movies to be short so they could run them more times and make more
Yeah,
money.
more time. And sometimes they would do a second feature to bring in more
Back
people.
then, yeah.
And they kind of balanced it to like bring in different crowds.
Yeah.
But now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, this movie is what you call, this is your prototypical drive-in movie.
Yeah.
This is a drive-in. Made for the drive-ins.
Yeah.
Not made for, the big movie palace even though it'd be cool to see, it's made for the drive-in back in the day. So
Yeah.
oh well, that's it. That's it for
good movie. Watch it.
Boulevard. Yeah, for our Candice Rialson film fest with I mean, I would, every movie she did was kind of, there's another one called Chatterbox. I told you about that. That's
Yeah,
another
you told
fun
me
one,
about
but
that one.
we're not going to be doing that. So, you can look that one up yourself on I'm sure it's on Tubi or something. Anyway, that's it for this week. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another movie.
I hesitated for a long time before doing this picture because as a star I have a tremendous influence over hundreds of thousands of people nationwide, worldwide. And after I did Bad Girls in Trouble, they legalized abortion. And then after I did Junkie Queen, pot was decriminalized in 13 states. I can't tell you how I felt about that. So I have to be very, very careful.